Part 1. The Plea. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council floated in orbit above the neutral world of Sanctum Prime. Inside, representatives from 47 different species gathered in their designated sections. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the various atmospheric requirements, creating a haze of mixed gases that shimmered under the artificial lights. Ambassador Kelron of the Vexathi stood in the center speaking platform. His 6 legs trembled with exhaustion. His compound eyes, usually bright with the purple glow of his species, had dulled to a sickly gray. He had been speaking for 2 hours now, explaining the situation that threatened to end his entire civilization. The Kragzon swarm had appeared in Vexathi space 6 months ago. At first, they were just dark shapes on long-range sensors. Within weeks, they had consumed the outer colonies. Within months, half the Vexathi Empire had gone dark. The swarm moved like a plague across the stars, leaving nothing but stripped worlds and silent space stations in their wake. Kelron projected images from the last transmission received from Colony 17. The council members watched as organic ships, each one a living creature the size of a cruiser, descended upon the colony. They watched as the swarm tore through defense shields like paper. They watched as millions of Vexathi died screaming. "We have lost 12,000 ships," Kelron said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard galactic speech. "Our fleet now numbers only 743 vessels. Our core worlds are under siege. Our children hide in underground shelters. We are dying." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each species representative. "We have fought for 3 cycles. We have spent our resources, our ships, our lives. We cannot hold much longer. We need help. We are begging for help." The Theron Collective representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, spoke first. "The collective sympathizes with your plight. However, we have existing trade obligations that prevent military deployment outside our territory. We can offer humanitarian aid once the conflict concludes." Kelron felt his heart sink. Humanitarian aid. They would send food and medicine to rebuild what remained. But they would not fight to prevent the destruction in the first place. The Phyraxian Empire's delegate, a towering insectoid warrior, was more direct. "Our treaty with the Vexathi expired 40 years ago. You chose not to renew it. The Empire does not provide military assistance to non-allied states." One by one, the species made their excuses: ancient treaties, budget concerns, internal politics. The Yasari, gentle beings known throughout the galaxy for their compassion and aid work, remained silent. Even they, who had helped countless species through disasters and wars, would not commit forces against the Kragzon. Kelron understood why. The swarm was terrifying. It could not be reasoned with, could not be negotiated with. It simply consumed. Every species that had tried to fight them had failed. The council members were afraid, though they dressed their fear in diplomatic language. As the session ended with no commitments, no promises, no help, Kelron made his way back to the Vexathi embassy ship. His aide, a young female named Shira, waited for him in the communications room. "There is one option," Shira said quietly. "One species we have not asked." Kelron knew immediately who she meant: the humans. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 40 years earlier. They were newcomers, barely past their own world wars and nuclear age. When they had applied for membership, the Council had debated for months. Humans were violent. Their history was soaked in blood. They had nearly destroyed their own world multiple times, but they had also achieved faster-than-light travel on their own. They had unified their planet. They had proven they could control their aggressive tendencies. Eventually, the Council had granted them provisional membership. Since then, humanity had been quiet. They attended council sessions. They followed the rules. They traded peacefully with other species. But everyone knew about their military. The humans maintained a war fleet that made council members uncomfortable. When asked why they needed so many weapons, the human ambassador had simply said, "We prefer to be prepared." "The council will not approve," Kelron said. "Humans are unpredictable. If we invite them into this conflict, there's no telling what they might do." Shira pulled up data on her display. "Admiral Jake Morrison commands the human defense fleet. He has been monitoring the Kragzon advance. Our intelligence suggests the humans have been studying the swarm for months." Kelron felt a flutter of hope. Why would they study the swarm if they did not intend to act? "I do not know," Shira admitted. But we have no other options. The core worlds will fall within 2 weeks. After that, our species is finished. Kelrin made his decision. He composed a message, encrypting it with quantum algorithms that would ensure only human military command could decode it. He offered everything he could think of: mining rights to 3 systems, access to Vexathi biotechnology, territorial concessions, trade agreements. He laid bare the desperation of his species. At the end of the message, he added a personal note. "We are begging for aid. Our children are dying. If there is any compassion in humanity, any honor, please help us. We have nowhere else to turn." He sent the message and waited. Hours passed with no response. Kelrun tried to sleep but could not. He kept seeing the images from Colony 17, kept hearing the screams of the dying. Then, 18 hours after he sent the message, a response arrived. It was an audio transmission, the voice of a human male, rough and direct. "Ambassador Kelrin, this is Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Combined Fleet. We have received your request for assistance. We are launching immediately. Hold your defensive positions around your core worlds. Do not engage the swarm if you can avoid it. Preserve every ship you have. We will be there in 72 hours. Message ends, that was all. No negotiations. No demands for payment. No political maneuvering. Just a simple promise we are coming." Kelrin immediately transmitted the news to General Thaxon, commander of what remained of the Vexathi Defense Fleet. The general's response was cautious. "The humans are sending 300 ships. Intelligence reports the swarm now numbers over 40,000 bioships. The humans will be slaughtered." But Kelrin felt something he had not felt in months: hope. Because he had heard something in Admiral Morrison's voice. Not fear, not hesitation, not the careful political calculation he had heard from every council species. He had heard determination. Cold, hard, absolute determination. The humans were coming, and Kelrin suspected that the galaxy was about to learn something about humanity that 40 years of peaceful coexistence had hidden. When humanity made a promise, they kept it, no matter the cost. The human fleet materialized at the edge of the Vexathi home system, exactly 72 hours after Admiral Morrison's message. One moment, the space near the outer planets was empty. The next moment, 300 warships appeared in perfect formation, their faster-than-light drives creating ripples in space-time that set off alarms across every sensor array in the system. General Thaxon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the display screens with all 6 of his eyes. He had seen many fleets in his long military career. He had commanded battle groups, coordinated massive defensive operations, witnessed the pride of Vexathi naval power in its glory days. But he had never seen anything like this. The human ships were different from council vessels. Where most species built elegant curved designs that reflected their cultural aesthetics, human warships were brutal and angular. They looked like what they were: machines built for one purpose only: to fight, to kill, to win. The largest ship, the ECS Relentless, moved to the front of the formation. It was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapon systems that Thaxon's computer struggled to classify. He had read the intelligence reports on human military technology. The Council had deemed much of it unnecessarily aggressive and excessive for peaceful species. Looking at that ship now, Thaxon understood that humanity had never been a peaceful species. They had simply been patient. A communication channel opened. "General Thaxon, this is Captain Ethan Brooks of the ECS Relentless. Admiral Morrison sends his regards. We are ready to begin operations." Thaxon activated his translator. "Captain Brooks, welcome to Vexathi Space. We are grateful for your assistance. I am transmitting our current tactical situation and proposed coordination strategies." There was a pause. When Brooks responded, his voice was polite but firm. "General, with respect, we do not need coordination strategies. We need you to pull all Vexathi vessels back to defensive positions around your homeworld and the 2 remaining colony worlds. Let us handle the swarm." Thaxon felt his mandibles click in confusion. "Captain, the swarm numbers over 40,000 bioships. Your fleet, while impressive, is only 300 vessels. We must fight together to have any chance of—" "General," Brooks interrupted gently, "we appreciate your courage, but your ships are not equipped for the kind of battle we are about to fight. Pull back, protect your civilians. That is how you can help us." Before Thaxon could argue further, another voice joined the channel. This one was deeper, carrying the weight of absolute authority. General Thaxon, this is Admiral Morrison. Captain Brooks is being diplomatic. Let me be clear. Your ships stay out of our way, or they will get destroyed in the crossfire. This is not arrogance. This is not disrespect. This is tactical reality. Now pull your people back and let us work. Thaxon wanted to protest. His pride as a military commander demanded it. But he looked at the tactical display, at the human fleet forming up with mechanical precision, and made the hard choice. All Vexathi vessels fall back to planetary defense positions. Do not engage the swarm unless they directly threaten the core worlds. Aboard the Relentless, Captain Brooks stood on the bridge surrounded by his crew. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes sat at the tactical station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls as she compiled data on the Krausen swarm. Around her, dozens of other crew members worked with quiet efficiency. Swarm is 3 hours away at current speed, Hayes reported. 42,617 bioships detected. They are moving in standard consumption pattern, converging on the 4th planet. Brooks nodded. Sound General Quarters. All ships execute Formation Delta 7. Prepare weapon systems for maximum rate of fire. The crew moved with practiced ease. Engineer Kyle Bennett diverted power from non-essential systems to weapons and shields. Dr. Amy Sullivan prepared the medical bay, though she knew from the mission briefing that casualties would either be light or catastrophic, with no middle ground. Either they would win quickly or they would all die. In the fighter bay, Commander Ryan Carter checked his squadron one final time. 48 pilots, all volunteers, all knowing that they might be flying into a meat grinder, but not one of them had hesitated when the mission orders came through. The Vexathi needed help, humanity answered. It was that simple. All ships report ready, Hayes announced. Brooks opened a fleet-wide channel. All captains, this is Brooks. You know the mission. You know the enemy. The Kragzon have spent centuries believing they are the ultimate predators in this galaxy. Today we teach them about the food chain. Today we show them what happens when prey evolves teeth. Admiral Morrison sends this message: no mercy, no retreat, no survivors. Across the fleet, captains acknowledge the order. Helen Price on the destroyer Fury. Jack Turner commanding the cruiser Vengeance. Ben Harris on the carrier Thunderhead. Each one positioned their ship with exact precision, creating overlapping fields of fire that would turn the space between them into a killing field. The Kragzon swarm appeared on long-range sensors. Thaxon watched from his defensive position, his heart's pounding. He had fought the swarm for months. He knew their tactics. They would spread out, surround the enemy, use their numbers to overwhelm any defense. No formation could stand against that tide, but the humans were not falling back. They were not even slowing down. They were accelerating forward. What are they doing? Shira whispered beside him. They are flying directly into the swarm. Thaxon could not answer. He could only watch as 300 human ships charged toward an enemy that outnumbered them more than 100 to 1. Aboard the Relentless, Hayes counted down the range. 1,000,000 kilometers. 800,000. 600,000. Brooks sat in his command chair, perfectly calm. Weapons free at 400,000 kilometers. Fire on my mark. The Kragzon swarm began to spread, moving to envelop the human fleet in their standard pattern. The bioships pulsed with organic energy, their living weapons charging for the kill. They had consumed so many species this way. Confident, unstoppable, hungry. 400,000 kilometers, Hayes announced. Brooks smiled coldly. Mark. The human fleet opened fire. The void erupted in light and death. Railgun rounds, accelerated to impossible speeds, tore through the swarm like bullets through paper. Each slug carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a bioship into fragments. And the humans were not firing single shots. They were firing streams of rounds, thousands per minute from each ship, creating a wall of metal that the swarm flew directly into. Missile pods opened, launching smart warheads that curved through space seeking their targets. Particle beam cannons carved glowing lines across the dark, each one burning through multiple bioships before dissipating. The humans had brought every weapon they had ever designed, every terrible innovation of their violent history, and unleashed it all at once. Thaxon watched in absolute silence as thousands of Kragzon bioships simply ceased to exist in the first 30 seconds of combat, and the humans were just getting started. The Kragzon swarm had existed for over 2,000 years. In that time, it had consumed 17 intelligent species and assimilated 42 others into its collective biomass. It had evolved to be the perfect predator, adaptive, relentless, overwhelming. Its collective consciousness did not feel fear because it had never encountered anything that could threaten it. That changed in the first 5 minutes of battle with humanity. Commander Ryan Carter launched from the Thunderhead's flight deck along with his squadron. 48 fighters screamed into the chaos, weaving between the massive capital ships as they poured fire into the swarm. Carter's tactical display was a nightmare of red hostile markers, so many that they blurred together into a solid mass. Gold Squadron, break by pairs, attack pattern Omega, target the big ones first. His wingman, a young pilot named Danny Walsh, stuck close as they dove toward a bioship the size of a battleship. The creature's organic hull rippled with bioluminescent patterns, and it turned to face them, opening weapons ports that dripped with acidic compounds. Carter did not give it time to fire. His fighter's mass drivers tore into the bioship's center mass, punching through its thick hide. Walsh followed up with incendiary missiles that burrowed deep before exploding, cooking the creature from the inside. It thrashed once, twice, then went still, drifting lifelessly through space. One down, 42,000 to go, Walsh said over the comm. Aboard the destroyer Vindication, Weapons Officer Nathan Pierce coordinated the ship's firepower with mechanical precision. He had been trained at Earth's Naval Academy, had spent 10 years studying warfare, tactics, and the art of killing efficiently. This was the first time he had put that training to use against a real enemy. He felt no hesitation. Railguns 1 through 12, continuous fire on Sector 7. Missile batteries, launch pattern Delta. I want those bioships dead before they close to boarding range. The Vindication shuddered as its weapons fired in perfect synchronization. Pierce watched his screens as dozens of bioships exploded, dissolved, or simply broke apart under the assault. The Krazon were trying to swarm the destroyer, but they could not get close. The sheer volume of fire created a zone of death around the ship that nothing could survive. 300 kilometers away, the cruiser Vengeance executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship its size. Captain Jack Turner ordered a full reverse thrust while rotating the ship on its axis, bringing the aft weapons to bear on a cluster of bioships that had tried to flank him. Heavy plasma cannons vaporized them in seconds. Damage report, Turner called out. Minor hull scoring on decks 7 and 8, shields holding at 73%. No casualties, his first officer reported. Turner allowed himself a tight smile. Reload all batteries. Find me more targets. The battle had been raging for 20 minutes, and the Krazon swarm had lost over 8,000 ships. The human fleet had lost none. This should have been impossible. The swarm's collective consciousness reanalyzed its tactics, searching for the flaw in its approach. The flaw was simple. The swarm had never fought prey that fought back this hard. Aboard the Relentless, Admiral Morrison stood in the command center, watching multiple tactical displays simultaneously. He had fought in 3 wars before joining the military academy. He had seen combat in the asteroid mining conflicts. He had commanded ships during the Mars Rebellion. He understood violence in a way that most species in the galaxy had forgotten. "Sir, the swarm is adapting," Lisa Hayes reported. "They are forming into tighter groups, trying to concentrate their mass for breakthrough attempts." Morrison nodded. "They are learning. Good. Lieutenant Hayes, execute Protocol Black." Hayes hesitated for only a second. Protocol Black was one of the weapons systems that the Galactic Council had specifically requested humanity never use. It was considered inhumane, excessive, and horrifying. It was also devastatingly effective. Protocol Black authorized, she confirmed, entering the command codes. Across the human fleet, specialized weapon systems came online. These were not kinetic weapons or energy cannons. These were biological warfare systems, designed by Dr. Claire Winters and her team after months of studying captured Krazon tissue samples. The first warheads deployed silently, releasing clouds of engineered microorganisms into the swarm. The Krazon did not notice at first. The organisms were microscopic, spreading through the vacuum on momentum alone, designed to survive in space for limited periods. When they made contact with the bioships, they activated. General Thaxon watched from his position around the Vexati homeworld as entire sections of the swarm began to dissolve. The bioships started eating themselves, their own tissues breaking down at the molecular level. The engineered virus attacked the specific proteins that held Kraxon cells together, and once started, the process was unstoppable. Thousands of bioships turned on each other in mindless agony, the swarm's collective consciousness fragmenting as the biological weapon spread. Some tried to flee, but the virus spread faster. Within 30 minutes, a quarter of the swarm was dead or dying. "This is genocide," Shira whispered in horror. Thaxon said nothing. He remembered Colony 17. He remembered the millions of Vexati who had died screaming as the Kraxon consumed them. He felt no sympathy for the swarm. The Kraxon collective made a decision it had never made before in 2,000 years of existence. It tried to retreat. Bioships on the outer edges of the formation began to turn away, attempting to escape back into deep space where they could regroup and adapt. Morrison watched them turn. "Do not let a single one escape. Deploy the net." Lieutenant Grace Mitchell activated a system that the human fleet had deployed during their initial approach. Hundreds of satellites, invisible to most sensors, had been placed in a sphere around the battlefield. When activated, they generated a faster-than-light inhibitor field. Nothing could jump to FTL inside the sphere. The Kraxon were trapped. "All ships hunter-killer formation," Morrison ordered. "Run them down. I want every bioship in this system dead." The human fleet broke formation, individual ships and squadrons pursuing fleeing bioships with ruthless efficiency. Ryan Carter's fighter squadron chased down a group trying to hide in an asteroid field, using their smaller size to navigate the rocks and destroy each bioship methodically. The battleship Goliath, commanded by Captain Sam Rodriguez, cornered a supermassive bioship that had been directing swarm tactics. It was 3 times the size of the battleship, a monstrous creature covered in armor plating grown from consumed starships. Rodriguez did not hesitate. He fired every weapon the Goliath carried simultaneously, overloading his power systems but turning the creature into burning wreckage. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out hundreds of times. The humans were not just winning, they were exterminating. Dr. Amy Sullivan watched the medical displays from her station on the Relentless. Human casualties were minimal. 17 crew members injured across the entire fleet. No deaths yet. She had prepared for massive trauma, for hundreds or thousands of casualties. Instead, she was treating minor burns and 1 broken arm. It was not that the Kraxon were weak. They were dangerous, deadly, capable of consuming species that outnumbered them, but they had evolved to prey on civilized species that fought with restraint, with rules, with mercy. Humanity had no mercy to offer. After 6 hours of battle, the Kraxon swarm numbered fewer than 2,000 ships. They clustered together in a desperate final defense, the collective consciousness recognizing that extinction approached. They had nowhere to run, no reinforcements, no hope. Morrison opened a channel across all frequencies, broadcasting in every known galactic language. His message was simple and terrible. "This is Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison of Earth. The Kraxon swarm is being eliminated from this sector. Any species harboring swarm elements will be considered hostile to humanity and our allies. This is your only warning." Then he gave his fleet the final order: "Kill them all." The final bioship died 8 hours and 43 minutes after the battle began. Captain Helen Price, commanding the destroyer Fury, delivered the killing blow with a spread of armor-piercing rounds that tore through the creature's central nervous cluster. It drifted silent and still, joining the 42,000 others that now littered Vexathi space like a graveyard of nightmares. The human fleet regrouped around the Relentless. Damage control teams worked to repair the 17 ships that had taken hits during the battle. The casualties were final: 4,218 humans dead, mostly from 3 ships that had been caught in suicide charges by desperate bioships. It was a heavy price, but compared to what the Vexathi had suffered over months of fighting, it was almost miraculous. Admiral Morrison stood in his private quarters, looking at the list of names. Each one represented a person who had trusted him, followed his orders, and died because of decisions he made. Lieutenant Sarah Palmer, age 24, killed when a bioship rammed her cruiser. Engineer Marcus Webb, age 31, died sealing a breach to save his shipmates. Pilot Jenny Crawford, age 22, went down fighting when her fighter was overwhelmed. He read every name. It was the least he could do. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." Captain Ethan Brooks entered, looking tired but satisfied. All ships reporting ready status. The Vexathi are requesting permission to approach and thank you personally. Morrison nodded. Tell General Thaxton he can come aboard in 2 hours. And Brooks, well done. You and your crew performed exactly as needed. Brooks hesitated. Sir, the Council is already sending messages. They are not happy about our methods. I expect they are not, Morrison said quietly. Prepare a report. Document everything. They will want to hold hearings, make speeches, condemn us for excessive force. Let them. We did what needed to be done. On the bridge of his flagship, General Thaxton stared at the debris field that had been the Krazon swarm. His tactical officers were still counting the wreckage, still trying to comprehend what they had witnessed. The swarm that had nearly destroyed his entire species had been eliminated in less than a day. Shira approached him carefully. General, the humans are allowing us to come aboard their flagship. Ambassador Kelrin is requesting your presence. Thaxton nodded slowly. Prepare my shuttle. And Shira, make sure our records of this battle are preserved in full detail. Every species in the galaxy needs to see what happened here today. 2 hours later, Thaxton stood in the conference room of the Relentless, face to face with the human who had saved his species. Admiral Morrison was smaller than Thaxton, as most humans were compared to Vexathi, but there was something in his eyes that made the general feel like he was looking at someone much larger. General Thaxton, Morrison said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. Welcome aboard. Thaxton carefully took the hand, trying to match the firm grip. Admiral Morrison, my people owe you a debt we can never repay. You have saved billions of lives. You would have done the same for us, Morrison said simply. Thaxton was not sure that was true. He wanted to believe it, but he remembered the council session, remembered how every species had found reasons not to help. Would the Vexathi have been different? He did not know. Ambassador Kelrin entered the room, his eyes bright with gratitude and something else. Concern. Admiral, I have been monitoring council communications. The other species are demanding explanations for your tactics. The Theron Collective is calling it genocide. The Phyraxian Empire says you violated the conventions of warfare. Morrison's expression did not change. What do you say, Ambassador? You were there when the swarm destroyed your colonies. Do you think we should have tried to negotiate with them? Should we have followed council protocols while your people died? Kelrin's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of emotional distress. No, you did what was necessary. But the council debated while you burned, Morrison interrupted, his voice hard. They wrote resolutions while your children starved. They cared more about maintaining their peaceful image than actually stopping a genocide. Forgive me if I do not care what they think. The room fell silent. Finally, Thaxton spoke. The council will convene a hearing. They will demand you answer for your actions. Then I will answer, Morrison said. I will stand before them and explain exactly why we did what we did. And I will ask them to explain why they did nothing. 3 days later, the Galactic Council reconvened. The chamber was packed with representatives, media drones, and observers from dozens of species. The topic was singular: humanity's actions in Vexathi space. Admiral Morrison attended via holographic projection from the Relentless, which remained in Vexathi space to ensure no swarm remnants had escaped. He stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by species that looked at him with mixtures of fear, disgust, and reluctant respect. The Theron Collective representative spoke first. Admiral Morrison, your fleet deployed biological weapons, used excessive firepower, and showed no attempt at peaceful resolution. You eliminated an entire species from this sector. How can you justify such actions? Morrison looked at the energy being calmly. I justify them by pointing out that the Krazon swarm has consumed 17 species over the past 2,000 years. They have killed hundreds of billions of sentient beings. They cannot be reasoned with, negotiated with, or deterred. They exist only to consume. We eliminated a plague, not a species. The Phyraxian delegate, a massive insectoid, clicked his mandibles aggressively. You violated every convention of warfare. You trapped them, hunted them down, showed no mercy even to those attempting to flee. Correct, Morrison agreed. Because if we had let even a fragment escape, they would have returned stronger. This swarm has adapted to every defensive tactic it has encountered. The only way to stop it permanently was total elimination. Every military strategist in this chamber knows that. The difference is that we were willing to do what was necessary. Colonel Victoria Shaw, Earth's military liaison to the Council, stepped forward with data displays. We have compiled evidence on every Krakzon encounter over the past 500 years. 17 extinct species, 42 assimilated. We have calculated that if the Council had acted decisively against the swarm when it first appeared, 14 of those species would still exist. That is 2 trillion sentient beings who died while this Council debated proper diplomatic approaches. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species defended their caution, their adherence to rules and procedures. Others remained silent, knowing that Shaw spoke an uncomfortable truth. Finally, the Yasari representative, a being of soft light and gentle presence, spoke. Admiral Morrison, we understand your reasoning, but your methods were brutal. Surely there was another way. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Was there? Tell me. When the Yasari encountered the swarm 70 years ago and lost 3 colony worlds before fleeing, what alternative did you find? The Yasari dimmed with shame and did not answer. Ambassador Kelran rose from the Vixathi section. I wish to address the Council. His voice was steady now, stronger than it had been during his plea for help. My species exists because humanity was willing to do what you would not. We begged for aid. Every species in this chamber had the opportunity to help us. You gave us sympathy. You gave us words. You gave us nothing that mattered. Humanity gave us survival. General Thaxon stood beside him. I have fought the Krakzon for months. I have seen worlds burn. I have watched millions die. The humans did not commit genocide. They performed a mercy killing on a cancer that was devouring the galaxy. If you cannot see the difference, then perhaps you have been at peace for too long. The Council descended into chaos, species arguing among themselves. Some supported humanity's actions. Others demanded sanctions, restrictions, formal condemnations. The debate raged for hours. In the end, they passed a resolution censuring Earth for excessive use of force and violation of galactic warfare conventions. It passed by a narrow vote and carried no enforcement mechanism. It was political theater, a way for species to feel morally superior without actually having to do anything difficult. Morrison accepted the censure without comment. He had expected nothing less. 6 months after the battle, Captain Ethan Brooks returned to Earth. The Relentless entered orbit around humanity's homeworld to a welcome that made him uncomfortable. Parades, ceremonies, medals, politicians, giving speeches about humanity's strength and courage. He stood through it all with a polite smile, but inside he felt hollow. Late that night he sat in a bar near the Naval Academy, nursing a drink he was not really tasting. The place was quiet, filled with off-duty officers who recognized him but gave him space. They understood that sometimes heroes did not want to be celebrated. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes found him there. She slid into the booth across from him without asking. Morrison is retiring, she said without preamble. He submitted his resignation this morning. Says he has done enough. Brooks nodded slowly. He had suspected this was coming. Morrison had been in the military for 38 years. He had fought in wars, commanded fleets, made decisions that cost thousands of lives and saved millions more. The weight of it had been showing in his eyes for months. What about you? Hayes asked. They are offering you command of the Relentless. Full captain, your own ship. That was always the dream, was not it? Brooks looked at her. Was it? I do not remember anymore. I remember wanting to explore the galaxy, to see wonders, to discover new things. I did not join the military to become an exterminator. We saved billions of lives, Hayes said quietly. I know. I read the reports. The Vexathi are rebuilding. 36 other species have quietly approached Earth about defense pacts. We showed the galaxy that someone is willing to fight the monsters. I understand the importance of what we did. He paused. I still see those bioships burning every time I close my eyes. Hayes had no answer for that. She signaled for another drink and they sat in silence. Two people who had done terrible things for good reasons, trying to figure out how to live with it. Across the city, in a small apartment near the spaceport, engineer Kyle Bennett sat at his kitchen table, staring at blueprints for the next generation of warships. The military wanted bigger guns, stronger shields, faster engines. They wanted to be ready for the next threat, the next swarm, the next war. He should have been excited. This was his life's work, designing the tools that protected humanity and its allies. But he kept thinking about the 4,000 people who had not come home. He had known many of them, had worked beside them, laughed with them, shared meals and stories. Now they were names on a memorial wall. His wife, Carol, found him there at 2 in the morning. "Come to bed," she said gently. "The work will still be there tomorrow." "I keep thinking I could have designed better armor," he said. "Better shields. Maybe if I had been smarter, worked harder, those people would still be alive." Carol sat beside him and took his hand. "You gave them the best tools you could design. They knew the risks. They went anyway because people needed help. That is not on you." Bennett wanted to believe her. He was not sure he could. On Mars, Dr. Amy Sullivan presented her research to a medical conference. She talked about combat medicine in zero gravity, about treating injuries from bioweapons, about the psychological impact of battle on human crews. The other doctors listened with rapt attention, taking notes, asking questions. None of them asked the question she dreaded most: how it felt to prepare for thousands of casualties that never came. How it felt to be relieved that only 4,000 people died. How those numbers haunted her, because each one had been a person she might have saved if they had just made it to her medical bay. After the presentation, a young doctor approached her. "Dr. Sullivan, I wanted to thank you. Your protocols are being adopted across the fleet. You are saving lives." Sullivan smiled politely and accepted the compliment. She did not mention the nightmares. She did not mention waking up in cold sweats, hearing alarms that were not ringing, rushing to save patients who were not there. She had read about this: survivor's guilt, post-traumatic stress, the cost of living through what others did not, the price of being a hero. In the Galactic Council chambers, politics continued as it always did. Species jockeyed for position, made alliances, crafted careful statements that said nothing of substance. But something had changed. There was a new weight to discussions about military threats, a new reluctance to dismiss defensive concerns, and there were quiet conversations held in private rooms away from official channels. Representatives from 38 different species had approached Earth's diplomatic corps with the same basic message: we do not trust the Council to protect us. If another threat emerges, can we count on humanity? Ambassador Patricia Green fielded these requests with careful diplomacy. Earth was willing to help genuine allies. Earth would honor defense treaties, but Earth would not become the galaxy's police force. They had their own interests, their own citizens to protect. What she did not say, but everyone understood, was that humanity would also not stand by and watch genocide happen again. The Krazon had been a test case. Humanity had proven they were willing to cross lines that other species would not cross, to do things that civilization supposedly did not do, to become monsters when monsters were needed. Some species found this terrifying. Others found it comforting. All of them recognized a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Power came not from the largest economy or the oldest civilization or the most elegant diplomacy. Power came from the willingness to use force when necessary, and humanity had that willingness in abundance. General Thaxon visited Earth 6 months after the battle. He came to attend the memorial service for the 4,000 humans who had died saving his species. The ceremony was held at Arlington National Cemetery, where humanity had buried its warriors for centuries. He stood among thousands of humans, listening to speeches about sacrifice and duty and honor. He watched as Admiral Morrison, in his last official act before retirement, presented medals to the families of the fallen. Watched as parents accepted flags folded into precise triangles, as children too young to understand held commendations for fathers and mothers who would never come home. Ambassador Kelrin stood beside him, all 6 eyes focused on the ceremony. "We have built monuments on our homeworld," Kelrin said quietly. "Statues, memorials, museums dedicated to the humans who saved us. But looking at this, I wonder if we can ever truly repay the debt." Thaxon clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "We cannot, but we can honor it. We can remember that when we had nothing, when we faced extinction, humanity asked for nothing in return. They simply came." After the ceremony, Morrison found them in the crowd. He was out of uniform now, wearing simple civilian clothes. He looked smaller somehow, older, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "General, Ambassador, thank you for coming," Morrison said. "It was the least we could do." Kelrin replied, "Admiral, what will you do now that you have retired?" Morrison looked out over the endless rows of white headstones, each one marking a person who had died in service to something larger than themselves. "I think I will try to remember what peace feels like." I have been at war in one form or another for most of my life. Maybe it is time to learn how to live without it. Do you regret what we did? Thaxon asked suddenly. The methods we used? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary. I regret every person we lost. I regret that the galaxy put us in a position where the only choice was overwhelming violence or complicity in genocide. He met Thaxon's gaze directly. But I do not regret saving your people. I would make the same decision again. Thaxon felt his heart swell with an emotion his species had no word for. Gratitude mixed with sorrow, respect mixed with the weight of unpayable debt. If we are ever in a position to help humanity, we will. Without hesitation, without condition. That is my promise to you. Morrison shook his hand one final time. I hope you never have to. I hope you get to rebuild, to recover, to raise your children in peace. That is what we fought for. That night, Thaxon stood on a balcony overlooking Earth's night sky. Beside him, Kelrin was silent, lost in his own thoughts. Finally, the ambassador spoke. Do you think they understand what they have become? The humans? What do you mean? Thaxon asked. They saved us with fire and fury. They brought death on a scale the galaxy has not seen in millennia. They did things that the Council condemns, that civilized species find horrifying, and yet they saved billions of lives doing it. Kelrin paused. They have become what they needed to be. Protectors and destroyers, saviors and monsters. The question is whether they can live with that contradiction. Thaxon thought about Captain Brooks and his bar, about Dr. Sullivan and her nightmares, about Engineer Bennett and his guilt. I think they are struggling with it. But they will endure. That seems to be what humans do. They bear impossible weights and keep moving forward. Far above them, the Relentless sat in orbit, being refitted for its next mission. New crews trained in simulators. New captains studied the battle reports, learning from what worked and what did not. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had made sure of that. And in 1,000 years, when historians looked back at this moment, they would mark it as the turning point. The moment when the galaxy learned that peace was not the absence of violence. Peace was what happened when good people were willing to do violent things to protect those who could not protect.